Yeah, this is Dean Johnson, and I'm interviewing Hank Hoolsema. And the date is March the 3rd, 2014. And we're at the Mocha Room Coffee Shop on Fraser Highway in Langley City. And I'm doing this interview for the reclaiming of the New Westminster Waterfront Oral History Project. So, in general background, Hank, where on the waterfront did you work?
Well, I started at Pacific Coast Terminals, and in the end, I worked on every dock there was. I was a heavy-duty mechanic a little bit later, and I worked at all the shops in the port of Vancouver and on the river. So I worked everywhere.
Good. What were the name of the firms you worked for?
Well, it was Pacific Coast Terminals, there would be Empire, there would be Canadian Stevedoring, there was Vancouver Wharves, Pacific Coast Terminals in Port Moody, Fraser Surrey Docks. Back then it was called Johnson Terminals in the earlier years.
Okay. Okay. Now, when did you start work there?
I started work in 1963.
And how long did you work there?
Well, I've been working there ever since.
Still working?
Still working.
Okay. Now, how did you, this is the source of employment now, this section. How did you learn about the employment opportunity?
Well, it was my dad that must have learned about it because he was there before me and I followed him. And so I just followed Daddy's footsteps.
Oh, yeah. Now, tell me, how did you get the job?
Well, I was a pretty young kid, and I remember my first day at work. I actually went to the docks there, and I wasn't hired for 3 days, and I still remember the superintendent, Harry Smith, at Pacific Coast Terminals, and on the third day he says, "Okay, kid, come over here. You can pull these boom chains and put them on a pallet." And that was my very first job, pulling boom chains on a pallet.
How old were you?
I was 16.
Did you have any relevant experience about before that?
Well, not so much in longshoring, but I was a farm boy, so I've had plenty of experience doing farm work, which wasn't a big stretch in longshoring.
Did anybody help you get your job?
Not that I can say somebody helped me, but because my dad was there and I showed up and I was in the superintendent's face, I guess, so he eventually just hired me.
Okay. Besides your dad, did you know any other people that was working there?
No.
Mm-hmm. What did you know about the work or the employer before you started work?
I can't say I really knew anything about it. I was looking for work. Dad took, back then, Dad took me out of school to work on the farm and then work elsewhere. So that's how that happened.
Oh, yeah. Tell us about, if you remember, and in detail if you can, your first day at work. Exactly from the time you got there and right through into the end, if you can remember. That's many years back.
That's many years. Like I said, I still vividly remember my first chore. And it was probably a couple hours, because I hung around. I had to wait for my dad to get out of work before I went home, so I just was hanging around. And like I said, Harry Smith said, "Okay, kid, you can start moving these chains." And that was my first day at work, and I can't remember what I did the rest of the day, but I remember my first task.
That's good. Okay, now the nature of your work. What was the work like, and what were your duties?
Well, in those early years, it was very labor intensive. It was work, a lot of labor, but it didn't take long before I was on a forklift. Within a few years, I was on a forklift. A few years after that, I was on a great all. A few years after that, I took my switchman's training, locomotives training, and also, I think I was about 21 or 22 years old. I took a mechanic's job at Centerm. I didn't know I was going to. I had backyard experience. I didn't know if they would accept me, but they called me back. So I guess I must have passed as a rookie.
Okay. Could you go through me a typical day at work?
What a typical. There's so much variety, and it's not like I have a typical day.
Well, pick one out in your mind that you remember and tell me about it.
Well, here's a typical day from the 60s. We'd be unloading ore cars, and we would unload 15 ore cars, and we were done for the day. And, many times we were done by lunchtime with 15 cars. We got proficient at it, and,
How did you unload them?
There was a gradle that was, had a mechanical sort of thing that was, where the rail cars would go underneath it, and the gradle was on top of it, and we would just dump it into a hopper, which would take it to the shed, and then the front loaders would pile it in the shed.
Okay. Now, what hours of the day did you work?
I'm sorry?
What hours of the day did you work?
It was, I think back then the hours were 8 to 5. We had an hour for lunch in those earlier years.
Okay. What did the plant or the shop look like? Was it busy? Was it noisy? Was it big? Was it small?
It was big. Everything was big. Yeah, the warehouses, the ships. I guess the ships were small in those days compared to today, but it seems like everything was busy and busy.
Oh, well, that's good. Did everyone do the same work, or were there specialized tasks?
No, not everybody did the same work. There were specialized tasks.
And how was the work divided up?
The work was divided up. Again, I mean, when it comes to ratings, I was usually you get a rating by sonority, and you got. I suppose back in those early years, there wasn't really a training like they have today. You just got on and did it.
Mm-hmm.
Things have changed now. Now you have to be trained.
So, in the early days, before you made membership in the hall,
Yeah.
you would come in the gate. And what was PCT like?
It had, I think, about 4 or 5 berths there. And a cold storage plant. That's where my dad worked, in the cold storage.
Mm-hmm.
And
Did you ever work there?
I did work sometimes in the cold storage.
All right. So you come in the gate in the morning, and where did you go?
Well, there was I guess it was a coffee shop, and there was a dispatch.
Was a dispatch?
Back then it was Henry Smith. He was the dispatcher. He was a little man, and he had always sort of like a cowboy hat on, and he was the dispatcher.
Okay. And he would decide what job you're going on to?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Now, did you work with a group of people or on your own mostly?
No, there was always a group of people. Every forklift had a swamper. You always had somebody working with it. Everything was, you usually teamed up with a number of people.
Okay. Were there any racial or ethnical criteria to the way the work was assigned? Was there any discrimination at all?
No, I don't think so. I didn't see it.
No, I never did see it either in all the time I worked there. Once you got started on that job, how did you learn the job?
Well, Dean, being on the farm, we had all kinds of equipment. So when we got on a forklift, I remember we had bulldozers. So when I got on a forklift, it wasn't a big deal. And same thing with the Gradle. We had tractors with front end loaders and things of that nature. So we worked with equipment all along as kids.
Mm-hmm. So that's how you learn the job, eh?
Yes, I would say so.
No, when you were doing your manual labor, how did you learn about that? Who told you how to pile sacks or whatever?
Well,
how did you learn that?
You know, Dean, I was 7 years old and splitting wood on the farm. So I had an axe in my hand when I was 7 and moving bales of hay. So it wasn't a big deal moving sacks or lumber or anything.
Yeah, okay. What do you think about the pay and the benefits?
You know, the pay and the benefits always surprised me because I still remember going to, in Murrayville store, they had advertisements for teachers. This is back in the 60s, and I was longshoring at the time, and I thought, you know what, I'm a kid, I'm making more money than a teacher. And that, I always marveled at that. And here's a teacher that's got to go to school. So the longshoring industry has always been paid well, from what I can see.
Okay. Did you get any special training on the job?
Matter of fact, I did. Of course, I got my switchman's ticket when I went to North Vancouver at Vancouver Wharves. So back then, they still had 2 steam-powered Shea locomotives when I took my switchman's training in North Vancouver, next to BC Rail there. And I did my 2,000 hours. I wrote my provincial exam for the switchman's ticket. A couple of years later, I wrote my engineer's ticket also with the provincial government. So I got those tickets. I suppose I grandfathered with heavy duty mechanics because I worked at Weshore for years. I was Weshore 24 for years there as a heavy duty mechanic, and I worked, like I said, just about every dock as a heavy duty mechanic. So I grandfathered in that, although I didn't have an actual ticket.
Okay. Any other training that you got?
Yes, I got crane training at Weshore. Of course, there was the built vulcanizing, and those are, I guess, special attachments. And warehouse, also some warehouse training because there was computers involved.
Mm-hmm. And did you do any forklift training? But you just went on it and did it.
That's right.
Okay. And winch training, crane training?
Yeah.
Just went on and did it.
Yeah.
Okay. And any special training on different types of forklifts or different straddle carriers or anything like that?
Well, I did them all. Dean, straddle carriers, yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah, we just went on them, that's all.
That's right.
Yeah.
It wasn't that big of a deal.
No. Okay. Did you need any special tools or clothing to do the job?
Well, you know, Dean, that's a funny thing. Back then, you know what? There was no high-vis vest. There wasn't steel-toed boots. Hard hats didn't really come into play, and neither did ear protection. And I'm sorry about the ear protection because I remember the Detroit diesels that I was working with, like the MX and you probably remember that, the MXs at
Weshore.
At Weshore, yeah. And they had those V12 diesels in it, and they were screamers. And my ears are somewhat compromised today as a result of not looking after that.
Mm-hmm. Did you, when you worked on the waterfront, did you have any interactions with other firms that didn't work on the waterfront?
No.
No, either did I. In all my history, I didn't really interact with other firms that, did. About the the closest I would say for me was working at Fraser Mills, loading ships there.
Yeah, that's longshoring too, though.
Yeah, but I didn't get some. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember Fraser Mills. Fraser Mills and also the rice mills.
Yeah, and the rice mills. Now, tell me about what cargoes PCT had and what you loaded at PCT.
There was lots of lumber.
Mm-hmm.
There was lots of apples. There's in the fall there was a lot of apple loading. Apples, a lot of metal, lead, and zinc. Lots of plywood.
Yeah. What else?
And of course, later on there was the ore.
Mm-hmm.
There was zinc and lead ore, bulk ore.
Okay. Now, tell me about the lumber. How was that loaded?
The lumber was, back then, it was all loose lumber of various lengths. And I'm sure Dean remembered the 3x9s that were long enough they sagged in the middle.
Yep, especially hemlock ones.
Yeah. So I remember all that stuff. And back then, the ships had, I don't know, several levels between decks, and every stick was loaded by hand in there until it was full. And sometimes the ship would be in port for weeks, up to a month.
Yes.
With 13-man gangs.
Yeah.
With steam winches.
Mm-hmm. And tell me, how did you stow the lumber inside the ship, the hatch?
Well, you just go into the wings with a stick, and you put it in, and then someone sort of measures it mentally and butts it out, and then you put the next stick beside it, and then on top until it's filled to as high as you can, and then you go into the square and fill the square, and then you put in the beams between decks, and then go to the next deck and keep going up.
Okay. Now, one thing that nobody really knows about anymore is hatch covers by hand.
Yeah.
Did you ever do that?
Oh, yes.
So tell us about this hatch covers and putting the beams in and how you cover up.
Well, you know, now they got hatch covers that the winch grabs and a whole big pontoon comes out. Back then, the beams, they had several beams, and the winch would pick up one beam and you would put it into place. And you sort of had to know where they had to go.
There were little slots.
That's right, there were slots. And so then you put the number of beams in, the metal beams across the square, and then you put the wooden hatch covers in on top, in between all the beams.
I remember putting hatch covers in and looking down at almost an empty hatch, and I'd be worried the beams would...
Exactly. I actually still remember when the first car ship came in, and all done by hook. That was
Tell me about that.
Yeah, it was different unloading. I think there was quite a bit of damage on that stuff, because you know what, everything was sort of when they hooked up on the side of the wheels, if there was any sway, it could hit the body. And they were Datsuns. The first ships were Datsuns back in the 60s.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember that they packed them so tight because they was Japanese and they were smaller built. Right. And we would go in there and with your jeans and your belt buckle, you couldn't help but scrape a car or do some damage. Yeah. So, how would you hook it up and how would you take it out of the hatch?
Well, you drove the car into the square, the winch would come down, and even the winch drivers had to be pretty good because it wasn't a single wire, it was a 2-wire with standing gear, and so the hook would come down, and there'd be 4 guys each grabbing a corner and swing the clamp on the wheel, and they gave the winch driver the signal, or the hatch into the signal, and away she would go.
Okay, and when they got on the dock, they would unhook it?
4 guys unhooking it, too. It was very labor intensive. And then while that car was going on the dock, someone else drove another one in the square.
Okay, that's the way she went. Now, what happened next to the next ship? How did it evolve to where it is now with the cars?
Well, just about everything evolved, Dean. From the loose lumber to packaged lumber, then forklifts, stowing the packaged lumber. And same thing with the cars. It wasn't long before they started having some ramps on the cars. And so the cars were driven off rather than coming out by hook.
Less damage that way.
much less and faster. Yeah, containerizations and packaging changed longshore dramatically.
Right. Getting back to PCT, apples, how did you load the apples?
The apples came in by rail car, and it was box by box. Came off in a pallet, in a shed. When the ship came in, it was hooked up by a couple of slingmen and went down the hold of the ship, and every box was unloaded in the hold, just like
yeah, they had
box by
freezers
box.
down there, and
Yeah.
you had to, yeah. And how was the lead and zinc? Not the oil, but the lead and zinc loaded. How did you load that?
That was usually that was brought in on the ship side by a carrier, like a straddle carrier, and that would be put in the ship, and every bar would be initially was just hand stove.
Now, did you do much loading with zinc or lead?
Yeah, there was lots of it, lots of lead and lots of zinc.
What else did PCT do?
Those are the main commodities. I don't remember they had any other stuff. There was a lot of pulp.
A lot of pulp.
Pulp too.
Do you remember the railroad at PCT, the steam engine? And
I sure do. I remember the Royal Hudson being there. That's just,
tell us about that.
well, you know what? I'm a kid off the farm, and I saw the Royal Hudson work on that dock there when it was retired off the main line, and I was just in awe to see this thing move. It was poetry in motion to see this thing. I was mesmerized by it. Just absolutely mesmerized by this thing. Then after a few years, they went because it was labor intensive, they had to have an oiler and fire it up every morning. I still remember the roundhouse that they had there. And later on, they had front-end loaders, and they used front-end loaders to move the cars around. It was a little more efficient, I think, for them, cost-wise.
Oh, yeah. Do you remember with the front end loader going,
Oh, yeah.
a few accidents he had
Oh,
with
yeah.
that?
Oh, yes.
But if you remember it, tell us about it.
Well, you know, Dean, I really wanted to be a switchman really bad. I was looking at these guys with switching, and when the opportunity came, I wanted it. But anyways, you asked about the accidents. You get about 15 cars, loaded cars, and you hit the brakes on one of these front-end loaders, it's going to do what it wants to do. And of course, I've seen a number of side swipes. But the thing is, if you were careful and kept under control, if you're pushing, you're fine. But if you're pulling, you know what? Because that's the only brakes you had was the front-end loader. There was nothing on the cars, and you get 15 cars of ore loaded. You're looking at probably 2,000 some ton. It's not going to stop very quick.
No, it's not. Yeah. Yeah, we had a few accidents here. Just fortunate nobody got hurt.
That's right.
You know that.
Yeah. As far as accidents concerned, there wasn't that many, but I do remember one man dying, and I can't remember the berth, but it was where the ore ship used to go, standing gear, and that came down, and I believe it might have been...
Was it Wilson?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gordy Wilson's dad.
Yeah, Gordy's dad.
63,
Yeah.
64, somewhere in
Yeah,
there.
somewhere around there. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if you went down up to B&K Dock,
Yeah.
remember that?
Yeah.
Did you ever work there?
Yes, I did.
What can you tell me about that dock?
Well, that was mostly a plywood dock, and you know what? I had fun with a whole bunch of guys. You know what, Dean? I've forgotten some of the names. DeBrune was one of them, and there were some other ones. But you know what? It's been fun. I just remember the fun that we had, the laughter, and some of the old timers. You know, I got to say something about Curly Smith. Probably not too many guys know about him.
Okay.
And I still remember that guy. He was as tough as nails. He would take his hand, his gnarly hand, and hit the side of the building, which is corrugated, and I'm thinking he's going to break his hand, and he never did. But he was quite the man. Curly Smith and a few others. Mulvaney.
Yeah, Mulvaney, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Mulvaney got me a job, a double-time job, for on a Sunday.
Did he ever give you a candy, Dean?
He offered. I never took.
remember that, eh?
Yeah, I remember that when you were kids. Here,
Oh,
kid,
yeah.
what a candy.
Yeah, and then there's Wood Eye.
Yeah.
And Eli. Was it Eli?
Yeah, Eli, yeah.
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 Some of the names coming back.
Oh, yeah, some of the names. Are really, those guys helped us young kids, you know.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
No, Mulvaney and those guys were real good guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they knew their stuff.
Now you come to overseas.
Yeah.
What was overseas like?
That was, yeah, overseas. You know, that wasn't a super busy dock, but it was all just plywood, as far as I remember, plywood.
Yeah, same with me. How many berths did that have?
I think it was only one, but it might have been two.
Yeah, well, there was well, it all depends on the type of ship you get from up to 4. I've seen up there.
Yeah, okay.
Up to four ships in there.
At overseas?
Well, it was overseas, and then there was B&K dock in between them, the whole
yeah,
group.
that small one, where the Lovejoy and a couple of others came for unloading the pulp.
Yeah, the small ones. No, there you go. Now, did you do any fertilizer?
Lots.
Tell us about fertilizer and how that happened.
Well, how did that happen? I know what happened. 2,400 bags and you were done.
Yeah. Well, tell us about the 2,400 bags and you were done. How did that come about? What did you do and where did you work to get that?
Well, you know what? You worked with some good guys like Roger McCarthy and Don and his brother.
Carriers?
No, the Carriers too.
And
Premax.
Yeah, Premax.
Premax. And you get a good group like that together, you could be finished as early as 9:30 in the morning.
Well, what would you do? Tell me about that day's work.
Well, you would do. They would push in the rail cars. And,
Oh, you worked on the rail cars.
yeah, you worked. All the fertilizer came out in rails, and they were 112 pounds. These bags. Back then, I think I was 140 pounds, so I was almost packing my weight with every bag, Dean. Mm-hmm. And anyways, yeah. They would. You'd have a good hand truck. Even a hand truck had its own personality. You have a good hand truck, you could pick up the bags nice and easy, dump them at the door. A couple of guys pull down the pallet, and you wouldn't really even carry them. You would be so good at it, you would just flop them into place. Because if you carried them, it'd tire you.
Yeah.
So you just kung fu them into place.
Oh, yes. And about how many bags in a car?
You know what? I think there was about 900 or so bags in the car.
Mm-hmm.
If I recall correctly, about 900.
So you're saying you could do 3 cars?
3 in apart cars.
And you'd be finished by 9:30 with a good crew?
It could.
In an hour and a half? Start at 8?
Well, you know something? Usually start a little bit before 8 too, Dean.
But as soon as you got there, you started to open the door.
That's right. And you needed good forklift drivers. You needed Roger Pence and there was a Johnson, Cease Johnson, and a few others. You needed some good forklift operators.
Yeah, to do it. You know, I'll tell you a story. The first time, or the fastest I ever got done was 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
We finished at 10. I went home. I was wiped, and I went to sleep. And the next thing I knew, it was dark out.
Well, you know,
it was a short day.
Yeah, but you know something, Dean? I guess I was used to so much manual labor on the farm that after 2,400 bags, I was still okay.
Well, I wasn't. I was wiped. 10 o'clock in the morning, boy.
No.
I was wiped. And I didn't do. It wasn't my main job all the time, doing it, so I didn't get really used to it.
Yeah, I did it for years.
Mm. They had one at Fraser Seaway Dock, Saks.
Yeah.
And I was about 60 at the time. And I took it just for the fun of it. And I worked on it. You just took it on sacks. We were on the dock piling sacks on pallets. And I did it. Yeah, we did it. Just to see if I could still do it. I was 60
Just
at the
bring
time.
back the memories.
Yeah, yeah. We went, the last lumber ship that they had, and it was, not packaged lumber, it was loose lumber
Yeah.
that we went on. There was a finish-up job, and we went and took it, all us old guys took it just for fun. We went down below and we did it. Hey, we had a great night. It was afternoon shift, and we had a good time. Hadn't done it in years and years, 30 years, and go back and do it. And there was never another loose lumber ship came in that I know after that.
No, then there was the pad ships, the roll-on, roll-off.
Yeah. Now, tell us about the pad ships.
Well, PAD, Pacific Australia Direct, was basically the name of the ships. They had the Perella, a couple of other names there. And anyways, that was loaded with, the lumber was just driven on by truck and trailer, and forklifts down below would, I think they had about 4 or 5 different decks. And that was, you can load a lot of lumber in short order in those babies, but they were discontinued after a number of years.
Yeah, I often wondered why they were discontinued, because we gave them good production,
Yeah, there was awesome production in that. Yeah.
And I like driving the big strads there.
Yeah.
That was good. And what else work was at PCT?
Well, that was it, Dean. That was, I can't remember anything else being there, like I said, other than the coal storage, but...
Yeah, I worked in the cold storage a couple of days during the strike, the 69 strike, I think. Just to get, and then half the money went to the union and half the money came to me and stuff like that. Well, okay, now, the old elevator. Can you tell us anything about the old elevator, working there?
Well, back then it was Johnson Terminals, and it was a slow dock. They did have grain elevators, but while I was there as a kid, they never used them. They eventually came down, and now it's called Fraser Surrey Docks. I still remember those warehouses down there, and it was quite something. There was a lot of lumber on those docks. It was quite more or less a lumber dock.
Okay. And
that's where the pad ships were being loaded.
Yeah. And was there any other type of cargo that went out of there?
Well, the containers started coming in the 70s there, and of course we destuffed them, so I did a lot of destuffing there.
Mm-hmm.
And
did you do any of the sawdust?
Yeah, I did a lot of sawdust there.
Tell us about the sawdust.
Yeah, the sawdust, we unloaded the rail cars with a front end loader, and there was usually a quota on that too, about 15 cars, I believe, if my memory serves me right.
Mm-hmm.
And then it would be stockpiled, and the ship would come in. They had a cat pushing into a hopper, front end loader pushing into a hopper, and that was also a decent job.
How did it get aboard ship?
They had like a huge blower, a tube, like a. It was pushed. It was transported by air onto the ship.
Okay. And did it have like a big ship loader? Tell us about that. What it was looked like, if you're going to try and picture it.
There was a ship loader that had minimal movement on it. They had to move the ship back and forth to get the other hatches.
Oh, this ship loader didn't go up and down on rails. It
No.
just was stationary.
Yeah, but it did have minimal movement.
Oh, yeah. Did you ever operate that?
Yeah.
And how did you like operating that?
It was good. Like I said, I operated to put everything there.
And how high was it built up when you had that?
Dean, I don't recall that one.
Okay. And the loader that went into the ship, did it go up and down, or how did you change hatches with that?
Yeah, I believe that the spout was you got to be able to lower the spout, raise or lower the spout.
Okay.
And I believe the spoon on the end was where you could actually rotate it.
Okay. And was there any barges being loaded there at Fraser Surrey Dock?
I don't recall barges being loaded.
Okay.
I did ships.
Now, downriver a bit, maybe. Now, what happened with Annis's marine terminal?
Annis Marine Terminal?
Yeah. Remember with Iggy, he was the foreman there, and Ford, and
Yeah.
Kotowich was the super.
Yeah.
What the type of cargo did they have?
You know what? I've maybe been too busy doing other things, but I just remember the cars.
Yeah, that's all I remember of them as cars. Except the last little bit, they had a little bit of lumber there, but they tried putting lumber back aboard.
Yeah, but minimal.
Yeah, it didn't work out. I don't think it worked out. Now, you mentioned the rice mills. Now, what was the rice mills like?
The rice mills was another heavy job to do because the rice sacks were even heavier than the fertilizer. And the ship would come in and we would unload them in the ship's hold, put them on a pallet, we'd take it out, and there's usually a jitney on the dock that had probably about half a dozen little trailers behind it. And you'd go under the hook and pull one jitney under or one trailer under and move to the next empty one so that could be loaded, and that would inside the shed, and the forklift would pick them up and stow it inside a warehouse. It was all wood plank docks. I've been down that road a couple of times, Dean. It's still called Rice Mill Road.
Oh, it has, eh?
It is. It's quite something to go back in the old stuff.
Oh, yeah. Rice Mill Road. Now, did you ever work in the warehouses on the rice road?
Yeah, I worked everywhere. I worked in the ship and on the dock in the warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was machine rated, I did so much machine work.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I know when I went out there when I was young, it was hand stove, sacks. Boy, they were heavy.
And do that in the sun and the heat.
Yeah, it was bad. You know, well, that's another interesting thing is coffee shops and lunchrooms. At the rice mills, what was a coffee shop like?
You know, Dean, I can't remember the coffee shop there.
It was right on the dock.
Yeah, it might have been, but I don't remember it.
Okay. At the coffee shop at PCT, what was that like?
Yeah, that was a good little coffee shop. I remember that. You know.
Tell me about it. What size it was.
You know what? It was good enough to hold 60, 70 people, and it was quite a little beehive of activity with, you know, ordering food, dispatch, talking about the stuff of the day.
Was the food any good?
Yeah, the food was good. Smoking was allowed at the time inside.
Yeah. No, the only other coffee shop I remember started was it overseas.
Oh, I thought you remember the Dunsmuir, maybe.
Well, that wasn't a coffee shop. No, that was. But do you remember the bus at the overseas?
Yeah.
Tell us about the bus and that woman who ran it and stuff. What you remember?
You know, I just remember. You know. I think you got lost me on that one, Dean.
Okay, that's okay. And now, what did you think of the union?
The union was a good place to be a member of. Mm-hmm. It was fairly close knit. A lot of people, you know, it was like a family. Mm-hmm. Brotherhood.
Mm-hmm. Now tell us the circumstances of how you made the union.
You know, that's so long ago. I can't say I actually remember. You know, I do remember.
I remember the 502 took over the dock, people who worked in the dock.
Yeah.
And they all automatically became union members.
Yeah.
And they were called backdoor bandits. So did that follow you all your working life, or did it? How did that work out?
There was some of that, Dean, but it petered out.
Because I know Mel McLeod, we saw you call him Len True, and we you back. just us old timers do that. But it's all petered out. But it really didn't follow you or bother you or do have anything.
You know, I guess you need a bit of a thick skin at times, but you know.
Okay, yeah, that's okay. So, you tell me you're still working now. How does that come about? How old are you?
I am 67 years old.
Okay,
You know,
young whippersnapper.
Well, you know, Dean, because I'm a locomotive engineer, in the last 10 days, the hall has phoned me probably 3 or 4 times to run the locate. So, you know what? I suppose because of my ratings, I still get called, whether it's switching or locate, at least for that.
Do you think that's a good benefit or not? What do you think about that?
I think it is, and I'll tell you why, Dean. I think everybody's different. I like to stay somewhat occupied. For me, life is about balance, and my balance means I need to be effective in a day. I've got to keep my mind and body engaged in the things of life. And sometimes the days that I do nothing, and I think if this is retirement, it's going to kill me. And it's not like I want to go golfing every day or playing every day. I think work is an integral part of being balanced. And not that you have to work all the time, but you know what? To keep your mind thinking and your body active is going to be good ingredients for a long life, or a longer life.
Well, that's good. Now, this section is going to be in changes in work and technology. And think back and when you first started and the changes that happened right up until right now you're working in technology.
Well, Dean, like I said, I started when it was still the age of steam. And you're probably quite familiar with the steam winches. There's steam winches, steam trains. And of course, that changed. It went from loose lumber to packaged lumber, and eventually to containerization. And of course, at West Shore, they had a 46A cat, which is the D8 cat, a smaller one, to now where they got the D10s that can outpush it by 2 times, but still only 1 man. And of course, with the troubleshooting there, they've got the PCs. They can troubleshoot rather quickly. And so technology has changed. Of course, with containerization, where they load it now 40 ton at a time with 4 or 5 cranes on the ship, you can see how much tonnage can be moved in short order compared to the older days. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I've seen the transition, and the transition has been huge.
How's it affected you?
I can only say it's affected me in a good way, because I can't say I enjoyed packing my own weight every 5-10 seconds. And so mechanization, I think, has been good. You can move more product. I suppose that's good in the end.
Mm-hmm. And all these different changes, how were they introduced?
You know, Dean, I believe they were introduced to be cost effective. You know, to have a 13-man gang moving a stick at a time, as opposed to a forklift pushing a package into a container, a couple guys, and then it gets hooked up with a dock gantry, and 40 ton gets moved in a matter of sometimes less than a minute. So it has to do with being cost effective, mm-hmm. and less damage.
I know with me, that probably was with you, as the new technology came in, I wanted to be the one to operate that new technology.
Yes.
I didn't want to let it get ahead of me.
Right.
And I'm still a little surprised I went to West Shore and never got a chance to drive the gantry cranes. Because I went to West Shore in 75.
Yeah.
But That was one thing. But if you kept up with technology, hey, you always had a job, you always had the picks you had.
Yeah.
How many ratings did you have?
Oh, you know, Dean, I haven't really counted, but probably at least a half a dozen, if not more.
Yeah, that's
You
what
know, there's a heavy-duty mechanic. I had all the forklift ratings, top side.
Mm-hmm.
The grade all, like I said, the dock, of course, the rough terrain cranes, not the ship's cranes.
Yeah.
Belt vulcanizing, heavy-duty mechanic,
Okay.
locomotive engineer, switchman.
Yeah. I think it was more than 6 you had.
Yeah, maybe.
Now, when it comes to the union, what union were you involved with?
What union? Just
Yeah.
502.
ILWU 502.
Yeah.
And how did the union affect your working conditions?
I don't know how to think about that question. How did the union affect working conditions? I think if there was ever an issue, the union would, you'd phone a BA to back you for safety concerns. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you ever go on strike?
Yes.
And what were the issues?
Well, it was usually pay. I can't say it was safety issues. It was usually pay and had to do also with pensions and etc.
Pay and benefits.
Yeah. Benefits.
Yeah. Well, tell us what it was like to go on strike.
Well, there was always that uncertainty, but one thing I do know, Dean, that the ports hold a unique power, if I can call it that. And it is the one point that the entire country depends on for movement of cargo in and out, and we are it. And so it becomes very important that this one part operates. So I always knew that even if there was a strike, it wouldn't be long, because it can't be long. The country can't live without us, can't live without ports.
You're right. Was the work dangerous?
You know, Dean, I suppose it is, but I also suppose it isn't. I think if you're safety conscious, it wouldn't be. But it's like anything. If you know something, you know it. If you don't know something, you don't know it. And if you don't know the dangers that are there, the inherent dangers, and you stay away from it, I guess it could be dangerous. It could be. But I think for a person like you and I, it isn't dangerous, because we just know not to be in the bite.
Right. And if by chance, when I was starting out, I got in the bite, there was a senior guy saying, "Hey kid, you're in the bite, see this or that?
Yeah. I do remember that.
Get out." And you know something? That training of not getting in the bite stuck with me all my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jerry Fighter has a good saying. I don't know if you ever heard it. Don't put your hands or your feet where you wouldn't put your pecker.
That's a good thing.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I did that.
Do you think the employer was fair?
You guys had a lunch house?
Well, I would say in most cases, yes. You know what? Because fair is the only thing that works in the end, Dean. There may be some rubs along the way, but and I think that's the natural course of employee-employer type of situations. But I think by and large, I would say it's fair. I think we're working in good conditions, Dean.
Mm-hmm. Good. What was your worst job, if you remember?
Probably hides.
Yeah, I think most people said that. Yeah. What was your best job?
Well, I've had a few freebies, Dean. I guess those are the best ones.
Yeah. But not counting the freebies, you had to spend the day.
You know what? I got to say I've enjoyed running the crane at West Shore. They had a new crane where you could do nice stuff, lift some heavy stuff. I enjoyed the crane. I also enjoyed CAT.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mind CAT at all.
Okay. Now, talk about your lifestyle and your family in this section. How did longshoring affect your lifestyle? And right when you were a kid, you started at 16.
Well, back in those early days, Dean, things are not like they are today. Today we have a little more freedoms, and full well at West Shore you get a man of your stature could get like 7 weeks holidays and 14% holiday pay. So I mean that can buy you a lot of time off.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so those things have evolved over the years. I think the big thing with longshoring is the freedom. If you want to work, you go to the hall to get dispatched. If you don't want to go to work, you got that freedom not to, and to me that's the priceless thing.
Yeah, it is. That you can just wake up in the morning and I don't feel like going to work. Just
that's right.
Don't show up to the hall.
Yeah, the hall was, the way I see it, was basically a surge bin of men available to do the jobs.
Right. Which did you like? Did you like working out of the hall or working at West Shore with the security of knowing the days, 6 months ahead of time, what you're working? With the hall, you didn't know.
Dean, at West Shore, you still had so many extra days off that you could do all the things you want. And there was something about not having to go to the hall 2 hours in the morning before you have to go to work. So I think maybe the worst part of the hall is the dispatch times before you go to work. By the time you get dispatched before you go to work is an hour and a bit, but then you got to go to work. Go to the hall, so it can be up to 2 hours or better.
Mm-hmm.
And when you work at West Shore, well, that was eliminated.
What did you like about West Shore?
Well, for me, I had a lot of variety there, and of course, the money was good, and also like the camaraderie. I think it was all good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I enjoyed the people there. I enjoyed the foreman. I had no issues.
Would you recommend longshoring to anybody else? Like if another young guy came in, he's 16, 19, he's got a chance to longshore. Would you say, hey, not really, or would you say, hey?
I actually have done that just recently. There was my girlfriend's son. I told him to go get try to get a trade. So he went almost out of high school. He got an apprenticeship with Wheeler Equipment, and now he's a journeyman, and he's been whitelisted already at TSI, and he's going to go to Freeze and Surrey Dock for an orientation, so he'll be whitelisted there too. And I think he's 23 years old now. So yeah. But you need to have a trade, I think.
Yeah. Longshoring is not the labor job it used to be.
Not the labor job. And if you're just going to go with the labor job, you're going to be in a pool of 2,000 people. But,
yeah.
But if you have a trade, electrician, heavy-duty mechanic, or even railroad engineer or switchman, you have an edge.
Yeah, you do.
So,
how did it affect your family?
Well, I suppose only in a positive way, Dean.
Okay. Any instances?
Well, you know what? As far as my family is concerned, I think there's over 20 of us there.
Yeah. There's a whole tribe.
That's right. There's the whole tribe. I don't know if there's any family as big in the entire west coast of the Americas. Longshoring.
No, I don't think so either.
There's got to be probably very close to 30.
Yeah, that are in longshoring some way or the other, And sociably, how did longshoring affect you sociably?
You mean with other longshoremen?
Yeah, with other longshoremen.
Well, there's a whole bunch of us longshoremen that once or twice a year we go to the sand dunes. And so yeah, we socialized, and also in Penticton we go do the camping thing. And there's a number of longshore people that get together.
Okay, okay. Now, we'll talk about safety now. Did you ever get hurt in the job?
Yes, I did.
Tell us about that.
This was, it was only a one-time thing that I got hurt on the job, and a bar of lead fell off the pile. The bar of lead was probably just over 100 pounds, and it fell on my toe. And Dina's cringing. And my big toe burst open, and so I was off for a bit, and I can't remember how long, but it might have been a week. That's the only time I was injured. And obviously I didn't follow, keep your hands and your feet when you put your pecker.
Yeah, I guess so.
So anyways, I'm careful now, more careful.
Yeah. Was there any women on the job?
There was no women on the job until recently, probably in the last, 10 years maybe.
Yeah. And before that, there wasn't really any job for any women.
No, it was so labor intensive, it probably would have been tough.
Yeah. Did you experience any particular hard times working on the waterfront?
Dean, I can't really think of one. No, not because of the waterfront. I mean, there's times where life has given you a bit of a rough time, but not longshore or not the waterfront.
Was there any particular really good times because of the waterfront?
Well, I would say almost every day is a good time.
Yeah, you look back on it.
Yeah,
Every day.
Every day.
It was a good time. Do you have any photographs at all?
Dean, I'm not that kind of a person, but you know what? I regret it because I saw so much, and I wish I had an archive of some of the stuff.
Yeah. It would have been something. What are some of the unique responsibilities and challenges you faced at work?
Well, there was always challenges, but I can't say there was any real difficult challenges. It's anything that came my way was able to manage it.
I don't know if I asked you, could you describe to me a typical day at work? From the time you got up in the morning, what you had to do to get your job, what job you would get, just sort of pick a job, and what you did after work, and stuff like that. Typical day.
A typical day. I've had a couple of marriages, Dean, so a typical day back then was different than a typical day today. There was...
Yeah, I'm talking about the 60s.
The 60s. Well, you know what? My dad still had the farm, so the typical day back then was longshoring, going to work, coming home, doing the farm stuff, whether it was milking the cows or doing the hay, and it was basically, and before going to work, had to milk the cows. So it was really, long days.
Okay, we'll talk about the longshore part of your day. When you got to how did you get to the hall?
We drove. My dad and I drove.
And where did you live?
We lived in Langley, near the hospital.
Okay. Now, when you got to the hall, what did you do?
Oh, well, then you turn your plate.
Now, what is this plate? Explain this plate in the situation.
Well, you turn your plate. There was at a specific time they turned the boards, and then you had to have your plate turned before that. And then they would call for, they had topside boards. They had this board and the other board, forklift board, and then the labor pool. So then you just, as the pin came to you, or you could take the job or turn it down, or
What would the dispatcher do? He would.
he would call your name. When it came to your turn, he would call your name. What do you want, Hank? What do you want, Dean?
And you'd tell him what you wanted.
Yeah.
And then what would you do?
Well, maybe go for breakfast.
Okay.
Go for coffee, maybe go for breakfast, and then turn to at 8 o'clock.
What time was this dispatch?
You know, back then I think it was definitely around 7 or quarter to 7.
Oh, yeah. And what job would you usually pick?
I would usually pick forklift.
Okay. Now, what would you usually do on the day with your forklift?
Well, I still remember doing a lot of lumber at Johnson Terminals, I guess, back then, or other docks. Mostly forklift, and a lot of forklift on the ship. But
Getting the lumber from where it stands to the ship with a forklift. Were there some places at Fraser Stewie Dock that was harder than others to get the lumber?
what do you mean by hard?
Well, not paved.
Oh yeah, they had gravel areas. Yeah.
And what was it? Same at PCT?
No, PCT was all paved.
Okay. And if you didn't take forklift, what did you do? You couldn't make it.
You know what? I almost always made it, Dean. I would take Dockman's job too.
Okay, after work, what did you do?
After work. Well, for the first few years, I was still on the farm, so I would go home and do the chores of the farm.
And after that?
At age 19, I was married. I wasn't on the farm anymore, and it was like, holy smokes, I got a lot of time on my hand now.
Yeah, you didn't have to do the farm work. I guess your old man was a little bit shocked. What? Well, he had 60 other kids to go.
That's right, he did.
You had a family of 16, didn't you?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, well, then one out of 16 is not that bad. Yeah. Well, any stories that you can think of?
Well, you know, Dean, in those years, I still so remember, because we had an hour for lunch, and all the old timers would just flock into the Dunny and the King Eddie, and the tables were a little bit smaller than this, but they would just be just full of beer, just full of beer. And it's not like I was a big drinker, but I'd have a couple. But and drinking wasn't so frowned upon back then. And you know what? I still remember some of those crane drivers or those winch drivers back then. They would be velvet smooth after a few beers.
Yeah.
But it all changed on the waterfront. I still remember. It's like, wow, how can this be?
Yeah.
But the table, you couldn't put another bottle on it.
You know, not at lunchtime. That's the way it would be.
That's the way it was. Drinking and longshoring sort of went hand in hand.
One thing that used to really surprise me is Bernie Anderton.
Yeah.
He would sit at the table with another, crowded with the beer.
Yeah.
He'd order another table by himself with his own beer. He'd drink with us and have his own.
Oh, Bernie, yeah.
Yeah, Bernie Anderton.
Oh, yes, yeah, those days are gone.
Yeah.
Now it's frowned upon.
Well, tell me about the King Ed.
Well, you know, Dean, it's not like I went often because I wasn't a drinker, but the couple times that I did go in there, that's just what I saw.
Yeah.
And it was just the old timers just chewing the fat. And like I said, they had an hour. They'd go back, and things went smooth. I got to say that I've never seen anybody drunk that they couldn't work.
No.
They may have happened, I just didn't see it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember Tommy Lindo.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, he was the only guy that sailed around the Horn.
Yeah.
And his story was something else. But he'd go at noon and he'd come back and he'd be tottering a little bit. You know?
Oh, you know what? I do. You know who was the greatest orator of all time almost? Was Selmer Bean.
Oh, Selmer Bean, right.
Man, that guy had a presentation and verbal skills unmatched.
Unmatched.
And he had a good tone in his voice, and he could draw a crowd. It didn't matter what he said, he could draw a crowd.
Yeah, if it wasn't off base, he ran for council in New Westminster many, many times.
Of course.
And but he's just a little off.
Just a little bit, yeah, but you know what? Those are the interesting people. They're the ones that are a little off. The ones that, you know, we're always looking at a train wreck, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I remember when he used to have sewer pipes on Fraser Sewer Dock, piled up there to go. And I remember he lived there all summer one time in the sewer pipe. But then he started to go a little bit more often. Finally, he's given up to his clone to his daughter, I think. I don't know whatever happened to him after that.
He was well known by the police.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He would probably do a small little thing to get into jail and have a bed and a meal.
Yeah. Well, I remember they had the Royal Columbian paper had a picture of him. They had an all candidates meeting.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there with his jacket over his head. He didn't want nobody to know who he was. And he's sitting there talking, carrying on, but having his jacket over his head.
Yeah. No, he was notable.
Yes.
Selmer Bean was a notable man.
Yeah, he was. Okay, that was it. And it was notable ones were Curly Smith, Selmer Bean, you know, Mulvaney, and those ones down there, all around. Yeah, they were good. Those ones were good. We had a good time with them. Would I? Oh yeah, would I? You know, we had a good at driving the winches and the crane. Would I? And one iron. Oh, yeah, that was something else. Yeah, we had that. Okay.